We've been talking so much about DNA Center, I know you're just itching to get your hands on it and play with it, right? Well, that's what we're doing in this nugget. So in this nugget, I'm going to give you a lab. A lab that has Postman installed, Postman being the tool that we use to interface with our APIs. They'll be able to access DNA Center, and I've got a series of tasks I want you to perform, all built to help you kind of navigate the DNA Center REST API, get a feel for it, and for what it does. You'll also be using skills you learned from the previous skill, where you learned how to use REST APIs and CRUD and HTTP methods. So fire up that virtual lab, put your skills to the test, and we'll walk through the whole lab here in a moment. Welcome back. How was the lab? Did you enjoy it? I hope you did. And if you want to check your work, we're going to walk through it real quick. And then if you want to do more things with the Postman and the Postman, if you want to play around with the DevNet API more, go for it. If you want to come back to this lab over and over and over and play with any REST API, go for it. DNA Center isn't the only one. There's the Meraki API. There's the SD-WAN API. But anyways, let's walk through this. The first thing I wanted you to do is just get logged into the DNA Center portal, the GUI, because that's one of the main ways we can interact with our Northbound API. So I'll launch Firefox, get into my GUI. You could also do this lab on your local internet browser, or even you could go and download Postman. It's free, and follow the lab as well, whatever you prefer. So the website is sandbox, dnac2.cisco.com. This is a freely available sandbox provided by the good folks at Cisco DevNet. Now, if the browser in the sandbox is going a bit sluggish like it is for me, you can launch your local browser and navigate to it as well, which I will do now. And you'll log in using those same credentials you see in the lab. Now, I really have no task for you in the GUI. I just want you to get logged in and access it. Just to say, oh, I have logged into DNA Center. And, just go around, play with some things. You're not going to break anything. They won't let you. Just have some fun. The rest of the lab will be focused on the REST API. The rest of the lab. I like that. So we'll launch our Postman application here. Oh, and I can't forget, open up the DNA Center REST API documentation. That link right here. I'll open it up on mine here. This will be your guide on everything we're doing right now and everything you'll ever do with DNA Center. Now here you'll see some remnants from the Star Wars API that we used in a previous skill, but now we're using it for DNA Center. So the first skill or task is to grab an authentication token by using the post request. So let's do that. The resource is right here. We're going to be contacting the resource or interfacing with the resource, which is the authorization token. I'm switching to my local Postman so I can zoom it up and make it look real pretty for you guys. But same application you're interfacing with in the lab. So that will be our resource. And then we have some headers we have to enter as well. We have to tell Postman that the DNA Center API likes to use JSON. So we'll say we accept application/JSON, which should be in the lab info right here. And then the content type will also be application JSON. We have our headers in order, but we also need to authenticate to get our token. Not just anybody can get a token. You have to have a username and password. Looking at the instructions, we can see that the authorization is basic authorization with the DevNet user and Cisco123 password like we use in the GUI. So looking at Postman, I'll get to my authorization tab, and my type of authorization will be basic auth. Username and password, DevNet user, Cisco123, which I already have here. So we are ready. Actually, no, hold on, we're not, because my method is wrong. I am currently getting something. I don't want to get anything. I'm going to post this to the token service. So my method will be post. And now I can send, and let's see what happens. Ta-da! I got me a beautiful, delicious token that I can use for any other API request. I'm going to keep that here, save it, and I'll open up another request and get it ready for our next task. I'll scooch this over here so we got all our instructions displayed beautifully. The next task is to get a list of network devices using the GET request. And I went ahead and threw in the resource URL, so /network devices. This is just to get you set up to actually send stuff with your token and make sure your token works. So I'll take that resource URL and post it right here. I'm looking at the network device resource. And then looking at my headers, I need the same accept, the same content type, but then we have the XAuth token, which is where we're going to place our token. So I'll get my headers ready here. Accept application JSON and content type, also application JSON. But then our new header we have here, x-auth-token, and that value will be the token we used in our last request, which was this guy right here in our JSON response. We will not use the quotation marks, just the value. And I'll paste that in right here. Boom. Now that should be all we need. We are getting the information from DNA Center, so we're getting a list of network devices. We've got all our headers in place, got our token, we're authenticating, we're ready for our arcade game. Let's send this. Ta-da! Let me scoot this up. We got a ton of devices kicking back to us. Woo! All right, so that's done. And then I had a question for you. What is the ID of the switch with the hostname leaf2.lab.local? Now, you could have gone through and just kind of looked through your list and tried to find, like we can see the first device listed here. We can find that hostname key value pair. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Right here. So we could go through and try to sift through all the data and figure it out. Or you could have drawn from a skill we learned in the REST APIs skill. We can use a parameter to search this information. Now, I realize I did make a typo here. I'll have that fixed later. 1B, not 2Bs. So leaf2.lab.local. Let's search on that host name. So I'll do a question mark to start our search. The field I'm looking at, the key is host name, and then the value should equal leaf2.lab.local. Oh, I thought it was a typo. Totally not. The host name is actually lab. That's funny. Well, awesome. So the question was, what's the ID of this? Well, if I scroll through here, at the very, very bottom, I have the ID. So if I take that ID, copy that, and go back to my lab, paste that in there, check. Oh yeah. Cool. Next step, let's get the site topology. Now I said use the API documentation. If we look at the API documentation, we got to figure out what we need to get the site topology. So we can see we have our sections here. Where do you think we'll go? Probably the topology area, right? And looking at our few options here, hey look, get site topology. If we expand that, we can see just by reading this, does it have any parameters, and seems to not have any requirements. So we can just send a GET request and get the topology. So let's try that out. So I'll just grab the URL from my resource, go back to Postman, and I'll change all this gobbledygook at the end to a new resource. And with my token to authenticate me, I'll go ahead and send this now. Boom. Now I wanted to show you this because one of the powerful things about DNA Center is you can not just manage one device, but manage your entire infrastructure. And using the API, you can just pull information like that and integrate it into whatever program or script or whatever you have so easily. So in looking at this, it's so cool. We got a list of sites and we can see what building they're in, what country they're in. It's just fun. All right, time for the next task. Let's go next to the next page here. Step 8. Using the API documentation, get the overall network health. Now, I kind of gave you some hints right here because it was a bit tricky, but if we look back at the documentation and we want to find network health, well, looking at all our options here, it's not apparent just based off of the term, but if we look in here, it says topology, get topology details, and overall network health. Okay, we're back in topology. And looking through our request, right here at the bottom, we have get overall network health. So we're going to be using that resource. But now let's make sure we're going to use it right. So I'm going to click on that to expand it and look at the documentation. You can see in the parameters, it's going to be looking for a timestamp key and then the value. The default value is nothing. Now I want to show you real quick what happens when I try to do this without the timestamp header. Let me grab this right here on my resource and I'll paste that into my Postman all the way up to DNA there. Oh, got extra space in there. All right, so let's send this now. Let's see what comes back. We have an error. Something's not right. So if we look back at our documentation, and like I just mentioned before, we may want to have that timestamp header in there. So we'll add that. So timestamp, oh no, not a header. It's a parameter. Timestamp, and I can leave it as blank. If I send this now I got something here. I can see here it is the most recent time because this is, well, when I'm recording this, 12/18. And then here's my health score of my network via API. So we saw in the GUI how it looks, right? Like if we look back at the GUI, it gives us this beautiful health score in the GUI. And that's cool. If you want to log in, check it. I'm proud of my network. Or you can have a program, a script or whatever that checks in on your health score. And maybe if it degrades, it can send you an alert or something. It's just the things you can do. Limitless. And then as I scroll down, I can see that we have the global health score measurement, 100. Then we have the router health score measurement. There's only one router here, 100. Wireless LAN controller, APs, got 10 APs. Oh, skipped right over to the switches, 2 there. Now the last thing I wanted you to do is what was the overall health score 30 days ago? Because remember, the huge benefit of DNA Center is the assurance piece. The fact that we can troubleshoot an issue, not just currently an issue that's happening, but we can look back in history and see, oh, well, you had an issue 10 days ago, but you never told me? Well, let me go back 10 days ago and see what was going on. Oh, well, there was the issue right there. We can do that. But now how do we look at the overall health 30 days ago? Well, looking back at the API documentation, we'll be looking at the parameter timestamp, and it will be epoch time in milliseconds when the network health data is required. What is epoch time? It's kind of funny. It's literally the number of seconds that has occurred since January 1st, 1970. That's what it is. So they're looking for that value in milliseconds. How do we find that? Well, if we look at the results we got, we can see that the time in milliseconds for this particular request when we just sent it is right here. Now, the instructions I had originally said 30 days ago, too far back. Let's do 10 days ago. Let's say December 8th. Now, I'll convert my human to timestamp. Here's the time in seconds, but we need it in milliseconds, and here it is conveniently right here. So I'll take that, go over to my timestamp value, paste that in there, and now let's send. Notice how it changes my parameter up here in my URL. Send that now. Look at that. It changed from 1218 to 12.8, and now I'm getting my network health score 10 days ago. So I can tell Bob, what you said was not true. You were fine 10 days ago. Your network was great. Now again, don't stop there. Keep playing. Keep playing a DNA Center. Keep playing with whatever REST API you want to interface with. You got the lab right here. And in this lab, we saw how we could interface with the DNA Center's GUI. And then we really just focused on the REST API because that's the cool part, right? We got device information, we got topology information, we got the overall network health using the DNA Center REST API, the controller that controls our entire network. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.